Hello and welcome to our roundup of the European Parliament's latest plenary session here in Strasbourg. The week saw debate on EU-US trade talks as well as action on EU-Russian relations, on the FIFA football scandal, and on copyright enforcement. We begin with a trade talks saga known as TTIP. The Parliament postponed a vote on the Transatlantic Trade and Investment Partnership, or TTIP. That's because the Socialists and Democrats proposed new amendments, sending the resolution back to the International Trade Committee for consideration. MEPs are battling over whether to include an investor protection clause in the trade accord, as the EPP group supports. The Investor State Dispute Settlement, or ISDS, would speed the process by allowing private investors to take their litigation to international arbitration tribunals rather than to domestic public courts. The European Commission has proposed reforms for arbitration in an effort to compromise. EPP Group Chairman Manfred Weber says he supports sending the resolution back to committee, and he bitterly criticized TTIP opponents.
It frightens me when I see, like here, the two extremes in this House, namely the radical left and right, stirring up outrage on both sides. And while the Greens stand alongside of these people, that worries me a lot.
In its resolution, the Parliament says TTIP must not lower standards, especially on important issues like consumer protection, health, labor rights, or the environment, and that the EU and US should seek to raise standards as a model for the world. Already, an estimated 14% of the EU's labor force, 31 million jobs, are linked to EU trade. And with the EU and US doing more than 700 billion euros in trade annually, lowering barriers through TTIP is expected to boost that even further. We turn to another complicated issue, EU ties with Russia. The Parliament is calling for a tougher stand because of the conflict in Ukraine. As fighting in eastern Ukraine intensified again, Russia's involvement in the conflict has stirred calls for more sanctions. The G7 group of industrialized countries warned Russia of more measures over what they called aggression in Ukraine, and the European Parliament has approved two resolutions that also call for stronger action. One aims to step up soft power measures, earmarking EU funds to fight Russian propaganda, including inside the EU. It says the EU can't return to business as usual and that Russia can no longer be considered a strategic partner. Cooperation in the defense sector should be suspended. Lithuania's Gabrielius Landsbergis of the EPP group drafted the resolution. He condemned Russia's blacklisting of MEPs from entering the country.
I would like to note that while preparing the report, I was planning on going and taking the opportunity to hearing out the officials in Moscow. Unfortunately, my fact-finding mission didn't take place, since my delegation was not let into Russia. We can only regret that now 19 of our colleagues are finding themselves in the illegal Russia visa ban list. This is not only disrespect to the European Parliament, but an insult to the EU as a whole.
The resolution also condemns intimidation of dissidents through violence, trials, and imprisonments. It calls on the EU to support Russian citizens who back democracy, rule of law, and human rights. A separate resolution criticizes Russia's illegal annexation of Crimea, its fueling of aggressive actions in Ukraine, and its military buildup in the Black Sea Basin. And yes, there's conflict in sports as well. The FIFA scandal. The Parliament has approved a resolution supporting a crackdown on corruption in football. The resolution describes a deplorable state of affairs in the International Football Association known as FIFA. More than a dozen of its executives were arrested in a corruption scandal. Its president, Sepp Blatter, announced he will resign when a successor is named. But the resolution calls for Blatter to be replaced now with an interim president. The Parliament has up to now avoided regulating the sport, but the EPP group's spokesman on the issue says that could change.
We've always been talking in the past about self-regulation for football, and it's not for politics, not for European politics, to try to regulate sport or to regulate football, and that's true, and we stay behind that, but on the condition that they guarantee good governance in sport. Otherwise, we are obliged to take an interest in that governance.
In its resolution, the Parliament calls on FIFA to establish strong ethical standards and a code of conduct monitored by an independent body. It calls for term limits for FIFA executives. And it underlines the importance of Swiss and U.S. investigators looking for corruption in FIFA's awarding the World Cup to Russia in 2018 and to Qatar in 2022.
If this legal investigation would prove that this has happened by means of corruption, then of course we will be obliged to look into it, and we will be obliged to ask UEFA, to ask the national football federations and associations, to ask themselves whether it's still possible to go to Russia and to Qatar.
The resolution also calls for the European Commission and member states to cooperate with Interpol, Europol, and Eurojust to tackle any FIFA corruption inside the EU. We conclude with another follow the money issue, chasing down those who steal and sell copywritten text, music, and other property. The Parliament has approved a resolution calling for updated measures against commercial piracy. It's a 10-point action plan proposed by the European Commission aimed at bringing Europe's copyright laws into the 21st century. It proposes new enforcement tools, including a due diligence process adapted to the online environment and improving companies' access to judicial action. The EPP Group's rapporteur, Pavel Svoboda, explains the plan's follow-the-money approach, cracking down on those who profit from it.
We should concentrate not on criminalizing individual users who, let's say, use certain pieces of copyright illegally, but we should concentrate on the ones who organize abuses of intellectual property rights.
Svoboda also says the action plan aims to make it easier for small and medium-sized businesses to protect their copyrights. That's it for now from this Strasbourg session. See you next week in Brussels. And find out more about the activities of the largest political force in Parliament by checking eppgroup.eu. Thanks for watching.